you confirm the reports that Chicago police were ordered to stand down when ICE agents were surrounded and rammed by cars? And do you want Chicago police not to help ICE agents?
And again, per the Chief of Patrol, we have all the units that per 999, Chief of Patrol said all units clear out from there. We're not sending anybody over to that location.
Our police officers respond to every single emergency in this city. The brave women and men who sign up to serve and protect this city.
Can you confirm, though, were Chicago police told to stand down?
What I can confirm is that our police department responds to every single 911 call. When 911 is called and there's an emergency.
One thing about law enforcement, I'll tell you this right now, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. But we accept that.
Federal agents called for help. Police heard the call, and then the chief said, don't respond. So now the superintendent is blaming this on miscommunication, but nothing says public safety like pretending a stand down order was just a bad game of telephone.
Good afternoon, Superintendent. At any time, maybe you can clear this up too, at any time on Saturday were CPD officers told by dispatchers to stand down?
Well, I don't know about them being told by dispatchers. There was some communication between boots on the ground, the supervisor, and the chief of patrol. So there was some communication by phone. There was something that was put out there that there was an internal message that came from the chief of patrol. That is absolutely not true. There is no internal message. There was a phone conversation.
That's not confusion. That's a command. Now everyone, from the mayor to the top cop, is pretending that they didn't hear it. And buried inside this scandal is another layer, the tension between City Hall and the CPD, the cops. Like I always like to remind you guys that the mayor called the law enforcement a sickness. Now the superintendent himself admitted that the Chicago police wouldn't arrest federal officers just because local politics declared their work unlawful, which is basically a direct shot across the bow.
Another one. CPD will not arrest and cannot arrest federal agents because someone deems what they're doing is illegal or unlawful.
What the Trump administration is doing is intentionally fomenting chaos. They're doing that on purpose because this president doesn't respect the rule of law.
It shows that the Chicago police knows they can't blindly follow City Hall without destroying their own credibility. But it also shows how fractured the chain of command is really when cops and politicians pull in different directions, opposite directions, and the public is left in the middle of all this chaos. So the situation that happened, we talked about this yesterday on the channel. ICE agents were running an operation and things got really ugly really fast. There were multiple cars jamming, basically rammed into the agents' vehicles. A crowd was forming. Agents radioed that they needed help, that they were surrounded. They called for backup. Chicago police heard the call, and the dispatch came back with no units will respond to this. Let's listen to the entire call.
And again, per the Chief of Patrol, we have all the units that per 999, Chief of Patrol said all units clear out from there. We're not sending anybody over to that location. All right, and 999, just to confirm, 39th Police in Kedzie, they were saying that they were being surrounded by that large crowd, and they were requesting the police were not sending. I'm waving off all the cars heading to 39th Police in Kedzie.
Again, those are the orders we're being given.
This was live radio traffic. So when this clip leaked, people had to start trying to save their own asses. So Superintendent stepped up to the mic and said it wasn't a stand down call at all.
We need to make sure that we have our officers and enough of them to respond to a scene if they are being surrounded. So were they told to stand down? Our officers were not told to stand down. Our officers were out there throughout the entire event. I would never tell our officers to stand down because if our officers were in trouble and we needed help from other officers, I would expect those officers to step in and help us.
They were being surrounded by that large crowd, and they were requesting the police were not sending. I'm waving off all the cars heading to 39th Police.
Think about the chain of command here. A dispatcher repeats a message, names the chief and officers in multiple units, all interpreted in the same way. Do not respond. That's not a slip of the tongue or a bad radio signal. That is consistent directive making its way down the line. If it was truly a miscommunication, you would expect immediate corrections. You would expect someone to jump back on the radio within minutes, clarifying, saying, No, send units right now. Mistake. That was a mistake. Over, copy, or whatever that they call it. But that didn't happen. Instead, it was silence. The moment of chaos was the loudest confirmation of them all. If it was just confusion, why hasn't an explanation come from the very start? Why did it take reporters pressing him for answers before the story became quote unquote just a misunderstanding? The truth is, the real miscommunication leaves trail of corrections, back and forth chatter, people scrambling to clear things up. What we have here is the opposite. One clean order, everyone heard it the same way, and now leadership is trying to walk it back once the public heard it too. It's not impossible that police radios get messy sometimes, but when the message is very crystal clear, repeated by dispatch and matched by officers on the ground, it stops sounding like confusion. It starts sounding like someone up top made a choice that they don't want to own anymore. Now, there's reports that rank and file cops were furious. They said they wanted to help, but they were ordered off that scene because this wasn't about safety. It's about politics. ICE is a dirty word in Chicago politics. It's dominated by Democrats. And you can tell there's a fraction between the cops and the mayor. He flat out admitted that Chicago police will not arrest federal officers just because someone in the city government decides their work is unlawful. Think about that for a second. He is drawing a line between himself and the mayor, trying to assure the feds that they won't be handcuffed by local authorities, but at the same time, he's trying to cover himself politically. That statement alone reveals how deep this divide between City Hall and cops on the street. The Democrat leadership doesn't want to be seen helping the feds at all, but they also know going too far against them would be catastrophic. So the answer is hedging, doublespeak, pretending dangerous stand-down orders were just an accident. Like I said before, the governor and the mayor both made it clear that they don't buy the federal narrative. They brushed it off as ICE was just exaggerating.
DHS says that CBP officers shot and wounded a woman in Chicago yesterday after, they say, she allegedly rammed a law enforcement vehicle and agents were boxed in by multiple cars. What do you know about this incident? Were federal agents boxed in and assaulted?
Well, we don't have a lot of facts. What happens in these sorts of incidents is typically ICE puts out a press release before anybody else can speak with the press, and then it gets reported on social media and elsewhere. First, they said that the officer had been threatened with his life. The reality of it and the truth of it has now come out, and that wasn't the case. They killed somebody. So here, it's really hard to know exactly what the facts are, and they won't let us access the facts. They are just putting out their propaganda.
But here's the thing. It doesn't matter what you believe. That tape exists. The agents were calling for help, and when backup requests get caught up in politics, the situation can only get worse. Lives can hang in the balance while leaders argue over semantics. While agents were getting boxed in, Johnson blamed Trump for militarizing the city. He says that the National Guard deployments were illegal and unconstitutional. Either way, Chicago's leadership looks like a clown car with a police escort. I think it wasn't a misunderstanding or miscommunication. It was an order that someone hopefully regretted. It could have went worse than what already happened, which was already pretty bad. Everyone is scrambling to rewrite the script that was already been set. And this is what happens when politics infects policing. He calls law enforcement a sickness, but it's a sickness based on how politicians use the law enforcement in a way that doesn't help the community. It only helps themselves, as you can see from the situation here. I understand the superintendent is in a really bad spot, and he probably would love Brandon Johnson to not be there as a mayor, but his credibility is shot. Instead of truly being transparent and saying, you know what, that was a terrible call, he wants to make it seem like it was a mistake, a miscommunication, which I don't believe. And when you do this, the cops on the street don't trust the situation. And when you lose trust up top, it becomes more of a problem. And Chicago's already on dangerous grounds as it is. You can't run a city like this. You can't build safety when every decision goes through this political filter. And you definitely can't tell officers to ignore the stress call because you are afraid of how it looks optically. You're afraid of bad optics. So what really happened that day? Was it a stand down? Was it a miscommunication? Maybe both. But you could tell someone's not telling the truth, and maybe more investigation needs to happen because at this point, everyone is pointing fingers, and you have the Chicago residents in the middle just suffering through this dumpster fire. So let me know what you guys think about this in the comments below. Who do you believe in this situation? The superintendent, the mayor, the governor, or no one? Let me know. Thank you for taking time to watch. Thank you for taking time to watch this video. Thank you for taking time to watch this video. And I'll see you guys in the next video.